Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. Today, we are continuing on in all about Dante's Inferno, specifically cantos 14, 15, and 16. We're going to do 3 today. There is a lot to talk about, but the last canto in that list is quick enough in terms of what I wanted to talk about that I figured it was a good day to knock out 3 cantos in a row. So last time we looked at the circle 7 with the violent, specifically the violent against others. That's the first round. The second round is the violent against self, which I talked about last time. And then this time we're in the third and final round of the circle 7 of the violent against God. But if you have read these cantos, and I assume that you have if you're watching this to learn more, then it might be kind of confusing about the people who are here. So I wanted to, before we even really start, break down what Dante means by violent against God, because within circle 7 round 3 there are 3 types of people in that section. So the first group that they encounter, Virgil and Dante, is the blasphemers. This is the most self-explanatory. People who blaspheme, they attack God or holy, sacred things in an overt way, whether that's verbal or what have you. So the person that we see in that section is Capaneus, more on him in a sec, and he directly attacked God in a verbal assault. Okay, makes sense so far. However, then we have 2 other groups here that are, at least in my translation, the school's translation, which again is not the best one out there, those who are violent against nature and art. That's how it's described, the next 2 groups. However, they're all sort of under the umbrella of violent against God. Okay, so we have the blasphemers. This is the other section that I don't particularly like talking about, but let's, unpack what Dante was trying to say here. So we have the violent against nature as our second group. If we think about God as the creator of all things, nature, human beings, etc., then to be violent against nature or the ways of nature is to be violent against God once removed. Kind of like if somebody insults a child, then the parent also kind of feels that it's like an indirect insult to them. That is kind of where Dante is coming from here. So what he considers to be violent against nature is, in this case, sodomy or any sort of unnatural sexual act, something that was considered unnatural at the time. So anything that is not very traditional between a man and a woman. So lots of people are in that section. More on that in a second. But so we have the blasphemers, the sodomites, as my translation calls them. I told you this is the second one in a row that is not my favorite to discuss. But in any case, and then you have a last group, and that is the violent against art. So we have God who creates nature and the ways of nature, and then we have people and nature also creating other things. So that's art, that's industry, that's the stuff that humans create, and the people who undermine that in a violent fashion are those who are violent against art. Specifically, what Dante goes after here are the usurers, so those who, the loan sharks. So they are being violent against industry. It seems kind of specific. I mean, it seems like those people would fit into fraud more logically, and fraud has not come up yet. That's going to be circle 8. But it feels almost like a catch-all sort of section, but I know that Dante was very thoughtful about how he organized all these things, and And that's the mindset here. So when you're violent against art, then it's like you're being violent against the grandchild of God, if we're following that logic. So hopefully that makes at least theoretical sense. You don't have to agree with Dante's, conclusions here or logic, but I just want you to have a better idea of where he, I believe, was coming from. So with that out of the way, we're going to look at the first two groups of that today. The usurers don't show up until the canto right after our session finishes today. A session? I don't know. Session? Class? Video? All right. So the canto 14, which is the one that we're beginning with today, starts with a couple of stanzas of retrospective sadness about the forest of the suicides from the previous canto. It's pretty beautiful and respectful, actually, even though, as we know from Circle 5, Dante is supposed to be going on this journey of accepting and encouraging the justice that is found here. There are a few places, notably the second round and the third round of Circle 7, when Dante himself shows a lot of human compassion to the people who are there. So it begins with that kind of compassion, but then he looks out to see the landscape of that third section of Circle 7, and it's this burning plain of sand with fire falling down, and the description of the fire is really beautiful. It says that flakes of flame fell slowly as snow falls in the Alps on a windless day. I mean, surprisingly gorgeous imagery here. And on the plain of sand, he sees people in three different postures, and the postures differentiate who falls into which of those categories I just described. So you have the people who are prone on their backs as the fire falls down on them. Those are the blasphemers. We have people who are running around the fiery burning plain. Those are the sodomites. And then you have people who are crouched down, and those are the usurers. So it's the posture that differentiates, even though they're all kind of in this same area. The way that Dante and Virgil get through this section is by standing on sort of a ledge that goes around the side of this circle. And so they're elevated from the burning sand and the flakes of flame that are falling down. So they have this sort of safety area where they can walk. Otherwise, Dante would be cooked, it says, if he were to run onto the sand, because he's tempted to do so later when he sees people that he knows and respects. Okay, so off they go. The first person that they talk to, it goes like this. The manner of their meeting is worth noting. So, poet, I said, this is around line 40 of that canto. Poet, I said, master of every dread we have encountered other than the fiends who sallied from the last gate of the dead, who is that wraith who lies along the rim and sets his face against the fire in scorn so that the rain seems not to mellow him? And he himself, hearing what I had said to my guide and lord concerning him, replied, what I was living, the same am I now dead. And then he goes on to blaspheme. No matter what God throws at me, I won't be tamed, that kind of thing. So it's the scorn that is so obvious in this guy who's lying down on the sand that draws Dante's eye to him. And so this guy, we find out that it's Capaneus, and I think I'm saying that name correctly. It's that guy who shows us very clearly that idea that the souls in hell really, they did have the chance to repent, to change their ways. They weren't doomed from the moment they committed a sin. They could have in life changed things. However, they didn't, and they continue not to feel that repentance. They continue not to take responsibility or to acknowledge that what they did was wrong. And the way Capaneus puts it is excellent. What I was living, the same am I now dead. It almost describes the idea of contrapasso pretty clearly, because contrapasso is that eye for an eye. It's a punishment that's fitting to the crime. And so the scorn and the hatred that Capaneus feels is part of his punishment. It's not just this physical torment, being on this burning sand with the fire coming down, but it's also, as Virgil says, line 60, "O Capaneus, by your insolence you are made to suffer as much fire inside as falls upon you." It's a really good snapshot example of the way that Dante tries to match up the attitudes of the souls and the punishments and how those kind of go hand in hand. What they were, they continue to be in so many ways, and that contributes to what they're going through here in the afterlife. So Capaneus is a character, a minor character in a play, Seven Against Thebes, where 7 leaders lay siege to the city of Thebes, and Capaneus in particular boasts against God and says, basically, I could take down God himself. And as he's speaking, he is struck by lightning. God retaliates, and there you have it. It's Zeus in that case, but he still says that he's greater than the greatest power, which still apparently counts. The rest of this canto is taken up with an explanation of where the rivers of hell come from, because Dante sees a little stream of that river of blood from the first section of Circle 7 coming down through the burning plains. And Virgil explains that it's the tears for the sorrows and I think for the sorrows of mankind that come down from this statue of the old man of Crete, which is a reference to a dream that Daniel has in the Bible, and also has a lot of symbolism about the different eras of man, and there's a lot going on there. Normally I don't really talk about it in class, but it's the tears that come down and create the different water, or sort of water features in hell. So that is all I want to say about that canto, I think. Oh, before I forget, because I did forget with Circle 6, I guess I explained the contrapasso there, how the wrath of God is very often symbolized by that fire, the traditional kind of view of hell, and so the blasphemers are getting the brunt of that traditional wrath of God, almost like God himself is attacking back in this measured response. Okay, Canto 15. Canto 15, we see the violent against nature here. Again, just disclaimer, right? You don't need to agree. I don't necessarily agree with all the things that Dante believed, but I'm just hoping that you'll understand better where Dante was coming from and see what he has to say here in Canto 15. Interestingly, in Canto 15, as Dante and Virgil are going along that edge, Dante at first doesn't recognize him, but there's a soul who comes up, and he kind of pulls on the hem of Dante's outfit, because of course Dante is higher up, he's on that sort of step up, and this guy has to keep moving. So he pulls on the outfit and says, "Oh my gosh, are you here too, Dante?" This is line 25, around line 25. It reads, "And I, when he stretched out his arm to me, searched his baked features closely, till at last I traced his image from my memory, in spite of the burnt crust, because his features are all distorted from the heat. And bending near to put my face closer to his, at last I answered, 'Ser Brunetto, are you here?'" It's a very tender meeting of two people who were clearly friends in life. So this is Ser Brunetto Latino, or some translations will say Brunetto Latini, who was a real person, as most of these people are that he speaks to. The difference is that Ser Brunetto lived before Dante did. Dante just looked up to his writings. He wrote some prominent works in Italian. There was the Little Treasure and some other treasure-based name for poetry, but Dante modeled some of what he was doing in the Inferno off of what he saw in Ser Brunetto Latino's work. And so kind of like how he makes Virgil a friend of his in this, he makes Ser Brunetto a person that his character, Dante, knew and was close to in life. And so they're shocked to find each other here in the section for primarily homosexual people. And there's nothing at all bad that actually is said about Brunetto Latino, except for trespassing that boundary that at the time you were not to trespass. Everything else is very kind and complimentary. Dante the character even says how you are a radiance among men. This is line 80 or so. You have this gentle and paternal way about you. I've always looked up to your work. So it's this reunion, and so the way that they're able to talk is by walking side by side, because Brunetto Latino cannot stop walking, otherwise he'll have to lie down like one of the blasphemers for 100 years. So they walk side by side like this. The punishment for the sodomites here has a fairly decent resemblance to the punishment for the lustful in Circle 2, who also couldn't stop moving. They were blown about in that windstorm, but here people just kind of have to walk aimlessly and not stop moving. And I think the rationale is very similar to the idea that their passions and whims just kind of took them places that they were not supposed to go. So anyway, they have to keep moving. The main thing that I emphasize in this conversation between Ser Brunetto and Dante in class is the part where Ser Brunetto says, line 55, "Follow your star, and if in all of the sweet life I saw one truth shine clearly, you cannot miss your glorious arrival." This is great news, because of course the souls can see the future, and Ser Brunetto sees, after the initial shock of seeing Dante there, that Dante will actually make it to his redemptive end in paradise. And so that's beautiful. The symbolism of stars is key to the Divine Comedy as well. So when he says follow your star, he's not just being a Hallmark card or a Disney song or something. Not like, I do like a good Disney song, but it's more symbolic of the hope of heaven, kind of like stars in Lord of the Rings and how they represent this ultimate hope. Very similar symbolism being used here. So follow your star, and then stars will come up again in important ways later in the story. So there's more to their conversation, but that is the majority of what I want to say here. Yeah, it's just a kind of a heartbreaking reunion. Even the end of this canto, when Ser Brunetto leaves, it says that he runs off like one of those who run in this contest, and of those, more like the one who wins than those who lose. So even Dante's view of how you should see these souls is multifaceted. Like, he knows that it's difficult to have that rage and disgust reaction that the angel has toward all of these people. Like, sure, toward some, but toward others it's a more natural thing, and perhaps rightly so, to have compassion and be kind. All right, and then finally we get to Canto 16, and Dante speaks to three more Florentines that he knew and liked in life. It says that he was tempted just to fling himself off of that little ledge and join them and if the fire hadn't been coming down and the sand hadn't been so burning, he thinks that Virgil would have allowed him to have this conversation. But as it is, it's these three guys whose names are so hard to pronounce. I'm just going to put them down below. I'm sorry, Italian viewers. But to talk to all three, the three of them form themselves into this wheel. So they're rotating the entire time that they're speaking, and they talk about how they ended up here in this particular section, what is happening or what will happen in Florence with some of the politics there. And then they also reiterate that if you win through this gloomy pass, they say, and climb again to see the heaven of stars, and they anticipate that will be the case, stars again. When it rejoices you to say, I was, then speak of us to the living. So they, like many of the other people before them, want to be remembered, not just for the things that the sins that they committed, but for all of who they were. Yeah, again, not much that I want to add. I feel like it's many of the things that I've talked about in this series already are reinforced with these three. Of course, there are some new things, but again, it's not a canto that I focus on. And then at the end, we get a very dramatic moment because Dante and Virgil reach the end of Circle 7, which has those 3 rounds. They've been traveling this for a long time, and they hit a cliff. It's just a sheer cliff, and Dante starts wondering how they're going to get down to Circle 8, and Virgil is very cryptic. I think Virgil likes drama, personally. I think he likes drama. And so he takes the rope that Dante's been using for a belt, he throws it down. It's almost like he's fishing or something, and then something rises up out of the gloom, and then commercial break. That's the end of the canto. I like Dante, the poet, enjoying the drama of the moment, and he loves this cliff scene. So I look forward to unpacking that creature that comes up out of the depths. So that's it. That is all for those 3 cantos. It brings us to the end of Circle 7. We're going to be in Circle 8 for a hot second because there are lots and lots of frauds in the world, it turns out. But that is it for today. Don't forget to subscribe. Like this video if you like it. And I hope this was helpful for you. See you next time.